everybody, it's your girl Evie and I'm back. So what did you guys think of the crossover event today? I mean, it's your girl Evie. I want to discuss it with y'all. So the episode opens with Olivia in her car driving in the rain, and she is on her way to a crime scene. Well, we come to find out that the crime scene is a bomb. A car has been blown up. And when she gets to the crime scene, she recognizes the person. It's Kathy. But before she gets there, Finn is already being on the phone with her, telling her, you're late to your own party. It's her award ceremony, and she's late. And she's like, you know what, I'll get there. When I get there, I'm working. Please excuse me. So she recognizes Kathy as the victim. And then she hears her name, and she looks over her shoulder. She hears somebody say, Liv. And she looks over her shoulder. She says, Elliot? Oh, my God. We see Olivia and Elliot meet after 9 years. And what happens after that? Is it going to be some tension? I told y'all it's going to be some tension. I just been waiting to see what kind of tension it's going to be. Okay, now she recognizes Kathy is his wife, and he's like, Liv, they tried to kill her. Who tried to kill her? Who was they? Next thing we see is Olivia at the hospital, and she is there with Elliot. Elliot's trying to get Kathy stable. She's at the hospital. They're working. So, the storyline basically is that Antifa or some terrorists or just some regular protesters who protesting against curfews have blown up some police cars, and this car has been blown up too. It's Kathy and Elliot's rental car. Where's he been? Okay, so Finn tells her there had been enough time between the two of them, and he really wanted him to come to her ceremony for her award, seeing that he was coming back into town, because he called Finn. He didn't call Olivia. He called Finn to let him know he'd be back in town. So we know that this guy Jacob may be good for this particular bombing. So we are leaving the hospital now that Kathy is stable, and we are going back to the station. But before we do all that, she's at the station. She don't really have anything to say to him. She gets a flashback to Kathy being in the ambulance before, and Finn snaps her out of it and is like, are you good? Now, he then tells her that Elliot's been an international liaison for the NYPD in Rome. That's right, everybody. He's been in Europe. Okay? Him, his wife, his kids. Now, we find out that he does eventually meet Amanda. He does meet Kat. He does meet Carisi, because he comes down to the precinct and he's like, I want to talk to this dude, Jacob, and see what he knows about my wife, in this bombing. And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, look, Liv, I promise I'll be good. So he goes in there and he starts interviewing Jacob, and Jacob is prodding him and he's baiting him. And he's like, look, that was your wife, right? And she was bleeding on the sidewalk, right? And you see Elliot rolling his sleeves up, and you know it's finna be something. And Liv's over there in the cut like, oh my God, don't let it be something up in here, because I'm the captain now. This gonna come down bad on me. So anyway, he keeps baiting him, and Elliot's like, look, either you know something or you don't. And so Jacob is like, yeah, I know your wife was bleeding on the sidewalk. And he's like, really finna go after him then. So she's like, Elliot, you're done. Come on up out of here. And she's like, look, this interview is over. So he leaves, and he lets her know that he knows it's her world now, and that she's the boss. And then she says, Elliot, the cameras are always on. And she knows, and she's like, it's a brave new world. He's like, I know this. I've been living in Europe, not up under a rock. So Finn goes, well, how did that go after he left? And since Kathy is now awake, Carisi wants to interview her, or at least send a detective that can interview her, because even though Elliot is there and that's her husband, he doesn't want him to blow the case. Finn tells him, look, he's not going to blow the case. This is his wife. He was a good cop. He's like, stop right there. Let me talk to you for a minute. I know you know him, but he didn't seem calm to me, okay? And I don't want him messing this up. A Molotov cocktail was thrown into other cars. We're not sure this is the case here, so we want to know what Kathy has to say. Well, when they get to the hospital, Kathy says she don't know nothing. She didn't see anything. Ellie was on the phone. It was dark. She don't remember starting the car. She didn't see nothing. And then she tells Liv while they're in the hospital before, she had told her, it's been 10 years since y'all actually talked. I can't believe it's been 10 years since y'all talked. And she says, well, he didn't tell me that he was back to work. And she's like, yeah, he told me he didn't tell you that he was back to work, but he was. And I didn't believe him. Kathy's hurting. She's tired. So they leave so she can rest. And then Elliot starts putting an apology on her. And she's like, I don't really want to do this right now. And he tells her he's sorry he put her in a bad situation, agrees it's her house, that he's going to go by her rules. He apologizes, says he's really sorry. And she's like, oh, you want to do this now, right? I mean, 10 years. You could have called in 7 years. You could have called in 3 years. You could have called 2 years ago, but you didn't. But you want to do this now. Okay, let's do this now. So she's like, Elliot, I had to find out from Cragen, our boss. You know, you were the most important person in my life. You were the single most important person in my life. And then you just disappeared. He says he was afraid that if he heard her voice, he wouldn't have been able to leave at all. You know, he's crying, you know, and then she has to go. She gets a call from her boss. She's so bewildered by their conversation that she can't even find her way out of the hospital. She's like, is it this way or that way? She don't really know because she has to deal with all of this that's been thrown in her face right now. So she gets a call from Deputy Chief Garland. She goes to the station. He says, look, I seen your boy up in the room and he wilding out. You need to calm down. You need to not let him in there like that. And she's like, well, you know, he's a good cop. He was a good cop before. I believe he's a good cop now. He's changed. He said, look, he had multiple firearm discharges. He has 6 fatal shootings. He might have changed. I'm not even done looking at his IAB record yet. Okay. And then he says, why did he leave in the first place? And she says, well, maybe it was a 16-year-old girl that he had to shoot in the station and he didn't want to go through IAB again or go through counseling or anything else that we were put through before, you know, so maybe he just left because of that. I don't really know because he didn't tell me. He never spoke to me after he left. Now, he was rough back in the day, but it was because he cares so much. He was a good cop then, and I'm betting he's a good cop now. And he's like, okay, that's great, but I'm going to need you to not let him back in there because he shouldn't be in the squad room. And she's like, okay, got it. That's a no. So Kat's still looking into Antifa. They think it's terrorist related. Kat wants them to tell her what Stabler is into because Arson has been asking her, is this the same Stabler that we had before? Because we kind of worried, you know, he was kind of rough before. So is this what we're going to be dealing with? And Finn says, look, I don't know. Get a man a break. His wife just got, you know, hurt in a car bomb. Let's get back to work. You know, she finds out from him that Stabler's been doing conference training sessions. He's been doing trial money laundering. They're all minor players. Finn meets Stabler at the bar. He reiterates that to him that he's been in Rome doing his job as the international liaison for the NYPD, but he can't talk about the cases, is what he's saying. So he says, well, why didn't you call, man? You know, why didn't you call? You could have reached out to us both. And he says, look, I couldn't have reached out to you both. It was just too long. You know, it was just too much time in between. So he says, well, let me bring you up to speed. Liv has a son. She had a very good relationship at one point, and he wants to know, you know, who was the guy. Well, he's like, well, you're going to have to ask Olivia about that. You know, she's the captain now. So Arson finds DNA on the cell that's been used to set off this bomb. Liv tells Elliot when he's in the hospital. She goes back to the hospital. Excuse me. I had a sneeze. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. So she tells Elliot, look, we found some DNA. But at this time, Kathy starts crashing. So next thing we see is Finn and her in the lobby waiting to hear some information about what's happening to Kathy. Well, Olivia finds out from Elliot that she's stable, but she had a heart attack, you know, that she's really in, you know, tender care at this point. You know, she's touch and go. So Elliot wants to see what's going on. And she's like, look, you know, I can't. But you can give me your case files and I can get back to work. And he's like, look, I'll have my boss send them right over. So she finds out from Finn that he's been working anti-terrorism, international sex and trafficking, and organized crime. Amanda says that the cell trigger that has been used in international rings has also been used in South Africa, but they kind of need to tie it together in the U.S. So Stabler, instead of Kathy, was the target, maybe. That's what they're finding out. Amanda asked her and Kathy, she asked her, Liv, were you and Kathy friends before all of this? And she says, not at first, but we were close at the end. Why? What's going on with that? And she says, well, it was kind of hard to live up to Stabler because you guys kept his desk as a shrine. It's kind of hard to walk into his shoes. And she says, well, he was there for me when nobody else was. I mean, he had a lot of pull here. He was a great guy and people really liked him. And she's like, okay, well, we'll figure it out. So, like I said, the cell phone trigger had DNA on it. They matched that to a guy called Mr. Linsky, who's in the Greenhaven Correctional Facility. So Finn and Carisi take a trip on up there. Now, Carisi is the assistant district attorney. So Mr. Linsky is up for parole. He's got 79 years. He's up for parole in a couple of years. He's already done 4 years. He's got about 3 more to do before he's up for parole. He's like, look, I'm not going to tell you who it is. If it is a member of my family, I don't roll on my family, so I can do 4 more years in my sleep. Bye. So they say, well, somebody wants him out of jail. Let's talk to some people. So his mistress gives up to his nephew, Sasha Linsky, who has no record, but he's already burned 2 houses down in the past. They said, well, let's go check him out at his job. Now, he works at a chop shop, an auto body shop, supposedly. But anyway, so Kat and Amanda go on over there. They ask about him. They say they got a warrant. And what happens? He starts running. So Kat takes him down like, she making a field goal or something. And she takes him down hard. And she in her good coat, too. And I'm like, not the coat. But anyway, he's 26 years old. No radical group connection. Elliot wants to talk to this newest suspect, Sasha Linsky. And Olivia's like, dude, did I not just tell you? No, you're not finna go back in there. Well, what you did earlier? No, I don't really trust you like that at this point. So Kathy's struggling. With COVID-19, we know the restrictions that they have with people in the hospital. You can only have 1 family member. So it's kind of rough. His kids want to be in there, but right now he's the only one. And she's like, well, that's why you should be in there with Kathy and let us do our job. So back in the holding room, Linsky says he lost his phone. He didn't blow up any houses. They all lying on him. Elliot was the target. Carisi thinks that Sasha is just a patsy, that he's going to take the fall for all of this. And he has the idea that whatever lawyer comes to defend him is going to want Sasha to cooperate so they can put him away and just, brush all this off. So Sasha is given a public defender. And Carisi tries to work a deal with him because the public defender comes into court like he don't know nothing, So Carisi takes him to the side. He briefs him as to what's really happening. And he's like, look, your dude gonna do life. Let's talk about it. So Sasha's like, look, I didn't know it was a cop's wife. He's like, great, let's talk. But before they can talk, this big time lawyer walks in and he's like, I'm taking over the case. You obviously don't know what you're doing. Your family's representing you now. Don't say another word. Well, after that, we see the scene go to Liv, where they're briefing her as to what has been happening. And she gets a call. It's Stabler. And Kathy has died. We know that because we go to the hospital and we see Elliot standing outside her room. I'm thinking he's just looking in on her to check on her again. But when we look in the room, it's an empty bed. The sheets have been taken off. There's nothing in there. And he's crying. Well, he turns around and he starts crying on Liv's shoulder. And she was like, Liv's like, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry about your loss. I'm really sorry. And now he's, he says he didn't get a chance to say goodbye. He said her spleen ruptured. It was too late. He doesn't get it. And she says, well, what about the kids? He hasn't even called the kids. So that makes me believe that he still trusts Liv. Because he hasn't even called his kids yet, but he called Liv first. But does she still trust him? So Sasha has now been arrested. He's in trouble. They've sent him to Rikers. He's at Rikers. And then Finn and Carisi say, well, let's get him up out of there. He needs to be in protective custody now because now he's going to be facing murder. And this has just got a little bit deeper. So they return to Mr. Linsky in prison. And, Sasha's dead, Basically, he's been given a hot shot in prison, which is drugs up his arm, heroin. Somebody has killed him. They don't want him to talk. Of course not. So they return to Mr. Linsky in prison, and they tell him, look, your nephew has been murdered. Now, he's visibly distraught by all of this. And they say, well, you know what? We done been up here twice now talking to you. So now your life is in danger, because everybody knows the assistant district attorney has been up here talking to you twice. So you better tell us something. So obviously he tells them something, because they go to the car shop. They start shaking down the car shop. Finn's like, go through everything, basically. Deputy Chief Garland tells Olivia the SVU has been called off of this investigation that is now going to entail, because it's gotten deeper and deeper and deeper. And we see Elliot in the chapel. He's crying. His kids have come in there, the only 2 that are there. He has to send for his other 3 because he has 5 children. So, a couple of them are still in Rome, he says. And we see Olivia. She's sad. She's really sad. And she sees her friend going through so much. But does she trust him? Even though she doesn't trust him, she still feels sorry for him. And we can see that she's about to tell him what Deputy Chief Garland has told her. But, it's going to be rough. This guy, Sasha's dead. All the leads are they're gone. So I'm interested to see what Elliot's going to do. Because Elliot's going to be Elliot, and he's going to get some stuff done. And so is Olivia. So we see a fade to black. Now I'm going to be doing part 2, which is Law and Order SVU Organized Crime, which is next. And that'll be the next video of that post. I hope you guys like. I hope you guys comment. I hope you guys share. I love you guys. And thank you so much for watching. Keep watching, because I'm going to keep posting videos in regards to Law and Order SVU, because I love it. And I know you do too.